Welcome, welcome, guys. We're back for another edition of The Lock-In. I am joined, as usual, by Dara Kearney. Dara, welcome.
Delighted to be here, David, and in the month of whatever it is this month.
Not yet. Don't give it away yet. Well, look, you're usually the only legend in the room, but we are very lucky this week that we have another bona fide poker legend. He is. Don't take this the wrong way. Here's the introduction I planned for you, sir. Our guest this week is a two-time bracelet winner. He is also the winner of the £55 bounty tournament at the Genting Casino in Sheffield. He is the charming, the affable Hendon mobster. He is our friend Barny Boatman. Barny, welcome.
Well, that was pretty desperate, wasn't it? That's proof, if it was ever needed, that legend just means old bloke. Well, I'll take it. £55. I'll have to make sure they get
2012, Sheffield, November 2012.
There's a little bare beat story behind that, a bit of bitterness. Did I do you in the final or something? I mean,
I was only at the 20 quid level at that stage, so I hadn't got up to
Yeah, you were watching the high roller from behind the rope. Yeah, one of my favorite things about the Hendon Mob is going on some like big famous player and seeing what the smallest result they have is. That can be quite edifying. My smallest result, for the record, is a min cash in a free roll.
Congratulations.
Well, look, you guys may remember back last Christmas, in fact, we had a very special show with our good pal Neil Channing. It was very clear that the content of that show was not recorded at Christmas. In fact, I don't think it was even recorded in December. So similarly, this show has been pre-recorded. So I'm not quite sure when it's going to air, but I do have to say we'd have no knowledge of whatever happened in poker last week. I'm sure there was some scandals that we are not going to be able to cover, unfortunately. Let's face it, there's a scandal every week, so there probably will be one. But I thought we would start, therefore, with a little game of let's guess what the headlines will have been like when this show finally goes out.
Does that mean I've already said everything I've got to say? Can I go? How does this work?
You have to guess a headline of something that might have happened in poker. I'm going to guess like in August.
Okay. Oh, there's going to be tons of stuff because it's a silly season, right? I think that's first of all, Elon Musk is going to announce that he's been developing an AI robot, poker robot, which mimics human tendencies. So he's working particularly on speech play. So it's like an optimal speech play that's guaranteed to send anyone on tilt. And he turns it on for the first demonstration, and it just shouts 9 high like a boss and.
I thought it was going to be my follow-up when I heard what you said. That's brilliant.
It just, no shame in passing. They keep shouting and stuff like that. It explodes, and it's a big failure. And there's got to be a couple of COVID-related ones, right? So, GG Poker announces a new live tour worldwide, calls it the super spreader, and then immediately has to apologise for the bad taste. Then evidence emerges that Charlie Carroll didn't actually develop in the wild, but he actually came from a lab, and maybe they were developing legal hires or something.
I thought John Hess would turn out to be his father. I thought that was how that one was going to end.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think August, this should be round about the time that the story should start emerging that half the cast of EastEnders are now driving cabs because Ross Boatman has sent them skint on set. London burning days he used to do. But I think the biggest scandal, actually, and this is probably really going to happen, sooner or later, the footage is going to emerge that shows without any question of doubt that the Isle of Man Poker Million was in fact scripted by John Duffy, and it was all filmed in Barry Hearn's shed. And there was no £1 million. None of it happened. They've kept a lid on it for a very long time. I don't know how they've managed it.
Were you in on it? You must have been in on it.
Oh, of course, obviously.
Or were you there by CGI?
On sixth prize. I wouldn't take anything less from my silence. 14 grand or nothing.
Dara, any headlines you can think of?
I'm thinking maybe we'll finally get the sequel to Brexit called Sexit when the Scots decide to leave. The Scots, having got a taste for leaving early after they got knocked out of the Euro 2020s or whatever we're going to call them, are going to decide they've had enough and they're going to leave the UK.
Yeah, made worse by the fact that the English did actually win the Euros. Congratulations, England. The Scots just couldn't bear to be that near you anymore.
Well, I've got to say I'm delighted about that. Although my one big punt has been that I backed Wales before the start at 280 to 1, and planning to bail out at some point. But I probably won't. I'm probably going to hold out for the 30 grand. So if England come a noble second to Wales in a shootout, I won't be too upset.
You did a good bit of business, I hope. Well, look, we're going to hit our first topic here, and it is poker sponsorship. I spoke to our mutual friend, Kat Arnsby, about this topic ahead of time, and she said, and I quote, actually, I've taken out, it's not exactly I quote, because I've taken out some of her sweary language, because we all know what she's like. She said, it's not okay how the poker world forgets older players. Barney is one of the OGs, yet we've got that arsehole Bilzerian representing the game. Fuck that. Dara, we have discussed many times how there is sort of an ageism in poker, particularly as it pertains to marketing poker. It strikes me that older ambassadors would help to attract an older demographic who have a bit of money. And it would also be very good role modeling for the younger players in the game. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think it is one of those situations that it is the way it is just because it is the way it is. There's a famous story about an efficiency expert who was brought in to try and make the French rail system more efficient, which, you know, that's a tough ask to start. But he came in and he found that there was this one train which left from Paris, went north, then sort of veered east, then went west, and then eventually started going south down to where it was actually supposed to go. And he asked various people, why is this the route? Like, there's a more direct route, and nobody could explain it to him. He eventually found an old timer who said, oh my God, are we still doing that? We used to do that during the war to confuse the Germans. And I think in poker, what happened is at the start, they just decided who's going to play online poker. It's going to be all young people, and it's going to be mostly guys. So the ambassadors need to be young guys. And that's just sort of just continued because that's the status quo right now. They've never sort of stood back and thought, well, hang on a minute, what do you need to play online poker? You need free time and you need a bit of money. Which demographic typically has that? The music industry has figured this out. Like, they market to an older audience because they know that they tend to consume more of certain types of music than younger people. But the poker industry just never seems to have got the message on this, which is quite staggering. And then the other issue is that, like, the kind of things that attract young people to the game and attract older people are different. Young people are primarily interested in, you know, the glamour, can I make a lot of money, etc., etc. Older people are more worried about, will my money be stolen in the middle of the night? And you know, hiring some young guy in a hoodie who looks like he might still live at home with his mom in his basement isn't going to reassure them on that front. So, yeah, I think it's definitely the case that the poker industry just needs to wake up on this.
It probably looks like he only leaves his mum's basement to steal your money. I mean, I was put in to confuse the Germans in the first place, actually, and I did a pretty good job for a couple of years. So I was man-to-man marking a couple of the top German players. No, it's true. I mean, I think that actually, you know, one of the things that's happened is that the major sponsorship deals now surely are genuine celebrities, you know, sports. Because I mean, at the beginning, when poker sponsorship started, they were trying to sell the idea of poker at all as a game, and they were trying to get people in and build something that wasn't there, or, you know, to any great extent. And now they're either after each other's player bases, or they're after completely new people from outside the game. And, you know, whereas we might have thought we were celebrities at one time, you know, actually my next door neighbours either here or in Madrid. Never heard of Daniel Negreanu or Phil Elmer. I mean, well, you know, it's so, you know, old or young. I think that probably the days of sponsoring poker players at all, you know, to any great extent might be numbered. I don't know, but it is true. I mean, I do find that, you know, when I do travel, you know, it hasn't been for a couple of years now, but when I play in smaller events around the UK or in Spain or wherever, that there are a lot of people who like to relate to you, like to feel like you're one of them, you know, and they don't care that you're not the best in the world. They, you know, that if you do get your bit of success, they feel like, oh, that could be me, you know, and you know, that's a kind of aspiration as well. It's just old folks' aspiration. I don't know.
No, I 100% agree.
I mean, it's not all about age, is it? I mean, it's about just if you've got other stuff going on in your life, if you don't see yourself as a pro, if you're a recreational player of any age.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of Bilzerian, which I suppose sort of was Kat's point, although maybe it was good that we didn't get into him directly because we've talked too much about him over the last few months anyway. The meteoric rise of GG in the past few years has certainly been one of the big stories of the last few years, no doubt. I think the last time we saw anything even resembling that sort of rise in the game was Full Tilt in the latter half of the 2000s. Barny, you had a front row seat for Full Tilt's explosive growth. Is it dangerous to get too big too quick?
I mean, I don't think you can necessarily extrapolate that exact lesson from what happened with Full Tilt. I mean, you know, obviously a lot of very specific things happened. But yes, it's probably dangerous for people who aren't business people to find themselves running a huge business and dealing with stuff that they're not equipped to deal with. It's probably dangerous putting a bunch of nosebleed sickos in charge of, you know, billions of pounds of money. That, you know, I mean, and you know, I'm sure lessons will learn that. But you know, I mean, Full Tilt is a very particular story. I mean, people talk about it as being, oh, it was a Ponzi scheme and stuff, and obviously a lot of people suffered from what happened. But like, you got to remember, it was a great idea. It was a great site. You know, it was a great product. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't something that was invented to fleece people of their money any more than any other online site is, obviously. But it was, you know, there was a very special set of circumstances that resulted in what went on.
Were there any, I suppose, indications? I remember getting those kind of weird checks from Canadian banks, and I remember someone made a joke recently about, you know, that they were the good old days when you got your weird check sent to you.
Well, see, if you ever cashed out, you might have. That was never a problem for me. I mean, you asked if there were. I mean, actually, me personally, not only did I not really spot what was going on before it happened, but even as it happened, I didn't really understand it. It took me a long time to get my head. I mean, for one thing, it didn't appear to be just Full Tilt at the time. It appeared to be Party and Absolute that all got frozen out by the DOJ at the same time. And from where we were sitting, we knew that there'd been this issue about the law, about this act that had come in shortly after Full Tilt started, which went after the processing, went after the money, but didn't go after poker directly. And there was this kind of grey area about whether poker was legal or illegal. And I guess we probably knew something about the fact that Full Tilt had taken legal advice that poker, you know, wasn't gambling and that's okay. And obviously what we didn't know was all the things they were doing to get around the issue. So, you know, when Black Friday happened, I actually thought, oh, you know, they've closed down the American operation. Full Tilt was very, very American based. This is going to be a real problem for the business. And the best thing we can do until they resolve it is to try and build the rest of the world as much as possible, you know, and we in the Hendon will be carried on wearing Full Tilt logos right through the World Series that year. We didn't take the Full Tilt banners off our site straight away, and for a while, you know, we felt like, you know, I mean, I don't remember when I first began to hear about the kind of dodgy stuff that people had got into to try and get around the issues, and that had snowballed into not segregating funds and all the rest of it. But certainly that summer, that wasn't clear to me at all. And, you know, people were coming up to me at the World Series and saying, why are you wearing that logo? These bastards have got my money. And I say, I'm really sorry they got your money. I hope it gets resolved. And if you can tell me how taking this logo off will help you get your money, I'll take it off right now. you know, and we. I guess we had a very different relationship because we got in with Full Tilt because of our website largely. Before we were with Full Tilt, the business model was very much, we had a lot of different banners, a lot of different adverts, we had a lot of different acquisition deals, and that all got, we went exclusive with Full Tilt, all that got taken off and Full Tilt replaced it. So when Full Tilt went down, effectively in kind of slow motion, so did our business, you know, and that was, you know, in the end, although we carried on for a while, we ended up selling the site because of that. So, you know, we were, you know, for a while there, we just thought we've got to try and keep this going. That's going to be what's best for everybody.
Yeah, well, that's a really good counter argument, because in a way, you keeping the logo on, although I'm sure it was a trigger for people whose money was locked up, actually, it was really important for that business to still look like a viable business so that they could sell what assets they have. And that's how, you know, ultimately people did get their money back, I suppose.
I mean, I don't think I was thinking quite that in quite as complex a way as that, but that was kind of roughly my thinking. And like, you know, I wasn't aware that anything that could be described as unethical or illegal had been going on. Still don't know the full story. It still seems to me that like no one started out to do that stuff, but a few very bad decisions were taken and it kind of snowballed. And some of it was, that processors weren't honouring deposits. And Full Tilt was actually saying, we'll give you your money, you go ahead and play, we'll sort it out with the processors later. And once they started to do that, and once they started to dip into other players' money, obviously, that's no good, you can't do that. Once I understood that had been going on, I could see that, I could see why people were as angry as they were.
Absolutely. Well, Dara, there are a bunch of poker sites operating these days, I guess, in unregulated territories. It's not dissimilar from how the UIGA sort of applied its overarching rule, and that's sort of still happening now. There are also a bunch of poker apps doing God knows what to make money for themselves in ways that cannot possibly be legit. I was asking you both to do predictions at the very start of what headlines might be, but could we see another Black Friday type event at some point in the future, Dar?
We absolutely could, yeah, 100%. Anytime you have, large operators in a market essentially operating outside the law, or at least bending or breaking the regulations in areas, there's the possibility for this to happen. It would have been inconceivable before Black Friday. If you said to somebody, we're going to wake up one morning and there's going to be a big DOJ sign on the Stars and Full Tilt web pages, you would have said, no, that's not going to happen. They'll do it some other way. They'll put a fine on them or something. But but then on the other hand, the poker industry has kind of learned somewhat from Black Friday. So, people operate, for example, makes it more difficult to get at them. But nevertheless, I do think it's definitely possible that, you could maybe have an international action where a number of countries come together to clamp down on some of these sites or apps. It's definitely possible. It's unfortunate that so much of the market is in, sort of gray to shady areas now. To give those sites credit, they have done a very good job on one specific aspect, which the main poker sites haven't done in recent years, which is actually attracting new players. Ironically, a lot of it is based on misinformation. I've spoken to players who feel that they're actually safer on an app. And I don't know whether that's just a genuine misunderstanding on their part, or the apps are going around, saying, play on our app, you'll be safe from all these predatory pros who have HUDs and RTA, et cetera. But certainly that perception is out there. So that's one unfortunate thing. And if we take the specific example of GG, for example, a lot of what Barney said about Full Tilt also applies to GG. The software is genuinely very good. It is very, very, very appealing to recreationals. They've done a number of innovations, all of which recreationals pretty much like. They've essentially taken advantage of the fact that the industry in the last few years sort of got into essentially a period of stasis where you had a very complacent market leader and a bunch of inept. Well, it's perhaps unfair to call the competitors inept, but they're certainly not very apt, if that's a word. Not really giving them any real competition. So anytime that's the case, there is always the possibility for somebody to come out of left field and actually give the market leader a genuine run for their money.
Yeah, I think that's a great analysis from both of you. And thank you, Barney, in particular, for going into the details on that stuff. I'm sure anybody who was around back then, hearing it from the horse's mouth now, and as kind of your perspective on it, they would garner value from that. Speaking of...
I'll tell you what probably is going to cause the whole house of cards of poker to come down sometime soon is when Phil Hellmuth wins the 20th consecutive double or quit. And there's just no more money left in the world to pay him.
So we're adding a prediction that he not only beat Negreanu in game 3, but he went on and won several more.
Well, yeah, I mean, getting ridiculously lucky every time, and Daniel Negreanu just going more and more gaga every time, and yeah, eventually it's just double or quit for everything.
I'm okay with the world where he double or quits himself into oblivion.
Yeah, I mean, one of the great intellectual debates is what would be the last living organisms on Earth, and a lot of people think it will be a cockroach. I think in the poker world, it will definitely be Helmut standing there with all the money at the end.
There was an article about him being the next great investor. He's like in Forbes magazine this week. Oh, I've given away when we're recording it now. You can find out when I'm recording it now. But last week or this week, he's in Forbes magazine. Yeah, apparently poker pro genius turn mega investor or something was the headline. Anyway, let's move on. Speaking of cataclysmic events, which we hope obviously won't happen in poker, we spoke in a recent episode, I think it was our interview with Jesse Sylvia. Dara, you and I asked him about, I guess, when we started playing poker, and I suppose it's fair to say that we began, and pretty much within a year or two of us starting, there was a global recession. And in a weird kind of way, poker ended up being recession-proof, or ended up being sort of a kind of a virtual land where we could be that wasn't affected by it, while you looked outside your window and things were getting kind of grim in the normal economy. That was obviously a crash that was precipitated by the subprime crash. And I read an article this week. One of the people to predict that crash was Michael Burry, who was made famous in that movie, The Big Short. He took the big gamble on, subprime effectively crashing. And a couple of months ago, Burry tweeted, and it kind of came up again in an article this week. He said, "People always ask me what is going on in the markets. It's simple, the greatest speculative bubble of all time in all things by 2 orders of magnitude." Burry repeatedly has told investors that they are being way too greedy, speculating wildly, shouldering way too much risk, chasing unrealistic returns. And he pointed specifically to companies and groups like Tesla, GameStop, investments in Bitcoin, Dogecoin, Robinhood, SPACs, inflation. I throw NFTs in there right now, frankly, as well. And just the broader stock market as well. So, Barney, are we ripe? Maybe if it's not going to happen in poker quite yet, are we ripe for another economic collapse?
You're asking me. I always have all my money tied up in cash and Jaffa cakes. I don't.
Well, those Jaffa cakes don't go off,
Well, I mean, there's always a bubble, isn't it? Any given time, unless a bubble's just in the process of bursting, we're always somewhere in the inflationary part of the bubble's development. Whether I don't know. What do I know? But I do know that. I mean, do you remember when they first had that problem when they introduced these computer algorithms and automatic trading on the stock market? So there were these kind of stop points, and all of a sudden, things would hit, shares would hit a certain point, and it would, these computers would all say sell, or they'd also, so you've got this incredible volatility. I think the equivalent of that in the real world now is social media and the general connectivity of the world. So as soon as a football player moves a bottle of Coke 2 foot to the left, Coke shares go out the window. As soon as Elon Musk makes a joke about Dogecoin, whatever, and there's this kind of we're all these little fish, and one fish flicks, they all flick, and so just just that very fact about how the world, works makes us more vulnerable, to anything that might occur, whether or not. I mean, the more you follow it, the more it's the more it seems to be based on less. We knew why everything dropped a year and a half ago. It's less clear why everything's returned to where it was. So it's, the thing is, what he's saying is a very believable story. He's got previous for being right. So, if he's believed, it'd be a self-fulfilling prophecy anyway, wouldn't it? I mean, if you can do that to Coke by moving a Coke bottle, what can he do by saying the things he's saying? I don't know.
I have to say, I loved your analogy there, but it's always marine life with poker players, isn't it? The fish. Yeah, Dara, there's a phrase in finance: bulls make money, bears make money, and the pigs get slaughtered. The Billy come latelys are often the pigs in that analogy. The other groups I would also point to, maybe, and that might be more specific to these times, are young people in general, who actually, any wealthy young people worldwide tend to have money in crypto. It's actually been pretty well documented at this point. But poker players more specifically, I think, are like, I listed those things, and that's like all fucking poker Twitter talks about, is basically all the things I listed as being the things that he thinks are all, part of this huge bubble. So when you look at those asset classes and you think about poker players and how they're they have a tendency towards gambling and maybe putting irresponsible amounts, or irresponsible parts of their net worth into these kinds of things, it does make you think that if the global market was to just, explode, like say it's on dancing on the knife edge now, and it was to just kind of go, and Barry is right, do you think poker will be one of the worst hit places? Like if we have no investment in that, I'm thinking to myself now, could I be like one of the richest poker players in the world playing my 1Ks?
It's certainly possible. I mean, before I get into that, I just want to preface this whole section by saying that the three of us talking about economics and the future world is a bit like listening to three fish who barely know the hand rankings, getting into the finer points of GTO. But so everybody watching this needs to bear that in mind. I mean,
sorry to interrupt. This is the bit where we have to put the not financial advice logo at the bottom.
I think I just did that. But
one risk.
I don't think there's much risk anybody would take financial advice from any of the three of us anyway. But having got the legalities out of the way, I think the people who are overexposed are sort of the players. So a lot of people have sunk a lot of their previous winnings into these high risk, high volatile investments. So they might actually come running back to the game if it all goes pear shaped, and could actually make the game tougher. What we've seen in the last few years is that sort of class of players have sort of moved up in stakes, and now you're seeing far more live high rollers and recently online high rollers than you did in the past. But there's a gulf between that then and the next class down, which are the class where we all inhabit. I don't think our area would necessarily be greatly affected. You started off the segment by saying that when there was the crash of the late 2000s, poker was relatively unaffected, and that was true. The big, my world was almost completely unaffected. I just went on doing what I was doing, playing online. The biggest difference for me was when we had recently moved into a house, and it was a new estate, and then over the start of the 2000s, the cars got bigger and bigger to the point where you could barely fit all the cars on the street, and people were arguing over parking spaces. And then in the space of a few years, you saw all the cars disappear or shrink. And now the cars have gotten bigger again. So I'm seeing more and more fights between neighbors over parking spaces. So to be honest, my wife was complaining recently about all the big cars on our street. So I think, she for one would be very happy if there's another major recession coming.
And actually, interestingly, you mentioned cars there. I know for a fact that subprime lending as mortgage lending, so backed by homes for hundreds of thousands, say like 90%, or it became like 110% of the price of a house. Those fucking bankers know that customer really well. Now, regulations may restrict them from making those kind of loans to them anymore. They can't give them 110% loans on £500,000 and £1 million houses. But what they do know is that they can give them 20 grand loans and 30 grand loans on for cars and for these kind of home improvements or whatever it is. And actually they know their customer and they're using all the same fucking techniques to try and get those people to over leverage right now. So your car analogy or your car sort of example there could exactly be the sort of canary in the coal mine for this whole situation. Keep us abreast of how many fucking SUVs come into Clonsilla over the next few weeks, Dara, please.
I will. Yeah, I'll keep. Yeah, it's even sadder than train spotting, car spotting, but I'll give it a shot.
Well, moving on, I have to say, Barney, I listened to that lovely episode of Cara Scott's recently, The Heart of Poker, that you gave her the best interview anyway. I was deeply ashamed of all of our previous interviews with you because you really got the best interview I've ever heard anyone get out of you. I thought you did a wonderful job, and you too. You spoke in that about your almost communist upbringing, something I didn't actually know was true. And something I just thought was a really nice piece describing your childhood and whatever. Socialism, don't mind communism, is such a bad word in America these days, and maybe the world over in some respect. We have a decent number of US viewers, so I thought maybe it would be nice for you to extol some positives of that upbringing or that way of life.
Listen, I grew up in for the first few years of my life, certainly in a house for quite a few years, in a house with several families in it, where we all kind of, as far as the kids were concerned, we were all sharing each other's stuff, but like that wasn't what was really going on. Every family had like a floor in the house each. My dad was a very committed trade unionist, and my mum was very political as well, and they were all quite left wing, and we got a lot of great values from them, I think, in terms of, you know, fairness and very big. I grew up with, you know, my mum's from a Russian Jewish family, and I grew up with stories about Cable Street and fighting racism, and that was always a big thing for me. But also, I mean, one of the things about growing up in an environment with ideas that are different is you just learn the lesson that just because everybody says something doesn't mean it's so, and to trust your own instincts about stuff, and so that, you know, that was good. And you know, because people say, oh, how does it tie in with poker? It sort of does and it sort of doesn't, because I mean, certainly I was a very individualistic and very adventurous kid. I don't know if you know, I hitchhiked around Europe for 6 weeks when I was 15, which I hadn't had permission to do. I just did it, and you know, spent half the time getting stoned with American soldiers who were back from Vietnam with bags of weed or whatever. So I mean, I had quite an, you know, it wasn't all about the politics; it was about the freedom, you know, which is something I would imagine Americans could relate to. I mean, as far as, so, you know, I've still got, you know, I've got a kind of portfolio of political views. I don't fit into any one box, I don't think, but certainly I lean to the left on all big issues, you know, I think probably in as much as you can identify that. And to me, socialism is part of, you know, it's part of what it means. It's part of the picture. It means things like the national health. It means stuff that, you know, it means, you know, basic stuff being there for everybody, not leaving people, you know, who can't take care of themselves to, you know, to rot, to fall by the wayside. You know, one of the big tragedies about what's happening in the UK and in lots of parts of the world at the moment with this pandemic is that we've got exactly the wrong people in charge. You know, we've got people whose instinct is, oh, this is an opportunity to make some money. You know, who've already been busy dismantling the welfare state and the national health over the last 10 years and more, and then now all of a sudden finding out the value of it, you know, just in time, but that won't stop them going back to their old ways. So, you know, socialism doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have individualism, that you don't have people doing. I mean, for me, poker in many ways is it might not suit me philosophically, but it suits me temperamentally. You know, it's like, you know, it's very, you know, it's people from all over. You get to meet people. There shouldn't be any isms. I mean, there didn't used to be many women in the game when I got involved, and that's been a big improvement. But generally speaking, you travel around the world, you're out for yourself, and so it's a kind of it's not socialism in that sense, but I don't know. It's a big adventure, and it's all about. It gives you an opportunity to discover the world, and I like to think it's possible not to get too brutalized by the game, and to hold on to the stuff that's important. You're a dad, you know that.
Absolutely. No, and I was struck as well, Dara. I know you've talked to me in the past about how there's some communists in your greater family as well, and how that sort of value maybe doesn't manifest itself as communism for you, but you're clearly similar to myself and what Barney has said there, very left of center, and has those views. Yet we've all sort of made peace with poker and that outlook as well. And just interested to get your take on that, and maybe leap off from what Barney said.
Yeah, the communism in my family is obviously my wife's side of the family. Her dad was an old style communist, and pretty much all her brothers and etc. were involved in that sort of area as well. One thing which I always think is sort of, history is written by the winners, and people tend to write off communism now as this horrible failure, and obviously it had terrible aspects in its implementation. It was one of those things where the implementation was very, very different from the theory. You could classify it as a great idea in theory that didn't work out in practice, but you do sometimes see in Western Europe a sort of a looking down on Eastern Europeans for having gone through that period. And for me, it's always been the opposite. I thought, well, at least they were brave enough to try something which was completely and utterly different and potentially a lot better. Now, it didn't work out, unfortunately. Human nature being the way that it is, when you get people to the top, they will abuse any system that is in place. And unfortunately, that particular system led itself to even more egregious abuses than the sort of every man for himself system that's called capitalism. But yeah, for me, it sort of goes down as a glorious failure, and give credit to those people for at least trying something different. Socialism, that does seem like a somewhat decent halfway house, and it is good to see all of the achievements that Barney listed for socialism, health services, etc. They're all something which I think Europeans are justifiably proud of. There is a movement coming to sort of try and get rid of all that stuff and return us to a more naked capitalist state. And I think it would be a lot worse if we got to that stage. There's a tendency also to see sort of America as the high point of capitalism, but like the American system is very unusual in that they essentially have a very fucked up form of socialism called the military, where a huge amount of resources are diverted, and in many ways it does act in some ways as sort of like really weird socialism. They take people out of poverty, they put them through education, etc., but they have to learn to shoot a gun. I think the more naked capitalism, pure capitalism, you actually see in a lot of the failed states around the world, where there are no sort of regulatory protections on people. And so yeah, the whole like capitalism good, look at America, socialism bad, look at some former Eastern European country, that doesn't hold water for me.
Also, the idea that it's somehow synonymous with democracy and freedom doesn't really bear a great deal of examination, and certainly in the States right now, it's frightening how flimsy that is, and how under attack it is, and that's one of the big fights that's going on. They've got a massive fight on their hands just to defend what democracy they do have. So that we'll be watching that with fear and interest.
And I suppose we do watch it with, sort of maybe through the fingers in our hands at times as well on this side of the pond. I'm conscious, maybe, have we done enough ostracizing half of our audience now, Darren?
more than half of ours. I mean, I would say on the whole, socialism is a bad word. I think there is also a lot of evidence that that's becoming less of the case in the US. People, you do have politicians openly using the S word. And not immediately being shunned from public service. I think a lot of the younger generation coming through in their values in the States are, whether they realize it or not, actually quite socialist. So, there's certainly grounds for optimism as well.
Yeah, to be fair, what you're describing is a mixed economy. I mean, the original definition of socialism would have been much more, all the means of production are in the hands of the people and all the rest of it. And things have got a little bit more complicated now, and most people don't mean that anymore. They mean something more like what you're describing.
Yeah.
Well, we started that segment with a sort of reference to Cara Scott's wonderful podcast, and it made me think of maybe other podcasts that, Dara and yourself, Barney, and myself, we all go on other people's shows from time to time. And I thought to myself, I suppose, like, one of the things you're always trying to do, you're doing your promoting thing, maybe we're trying to go there and sell poker at some level, but there's another part of it which is always about, like, can you get a different kind of interview, or can you give a different kind of interview too? I suppose when we're interviewing people, I'm always conscious of the other interviews they've done, and I hope that in our prep work, Dara, we can make our one a little bit different or stand out. And then similarly, when you go on someone else's show, you're very conscious of the fact that there are people who maybe I don't want to say through no fault of their own, because I suppose it would be their fault, but they get a very samey interview out of you as other people do. And you're kind of hoping that they get a more interesting one. And with that in mind, I was wondering, Dara, has anybody in the last year or so maybe, got into a different nook of your life, or maybe taken you in a different direction to one you normally go?
I'll give credit to Brad Wilson here. I think the last interview I did covered a lot of ground that I wouldn't normally cover. It is something I've become more conscious of over time. The first time you do a podcast, you don't really even think about what you're going to say. You're just going to answer the questions that are asked. But maybe after the 10th one, you start to realize that you keep getting asked the same questions and you keep giving the same answers, and that's quite boring. I think it also depends on your audience as well. Like, I've done a few what I would call mainstream podcasts, which are aimed at people who have no idea who I am and know very little about poker. And I don't think you should really diverge too far in those. You do kind of have to give the same story over and over again. You have to work out, what are the things they want to hear that are true, obviously, and then get those across. But when you're dealing with the other type of podcast, which is most podcasts that we go on, which are other poker podcasts, if you just give the same interview over and over again, it gets very, very samey and dull, and there's really no point to it. You might as well tell people, just go back and listen to my Thinking Poker interview. I was asked the same questions and I gave the same answers. Like nowadays, even if I do get asked the same question, I do try and come at it from a different angle, or at least tell a different anecdote. Although I'm kind of at the Grandpa Simpson stage now, where I'm not sure what anecdotes I've already told, even on my own show. But yeah,
that's what I do.
David Bowie told me once that he had a particular problem in this area, because obviously when he had a new album out, he would be put in a hotel room and he'd have to do 50 interviews in a day, and they always asked us exactly the same questions. But he said he just started making shit up at the end, because then at least the answers are different.
Well, Barney, on that great episode of Cara Scott's show, you said something along the lines of, I'm very gregarious, but I prefer talking about other people. So I don't know, with that in mind, and maybe even going back further in time to interviews you've done, who stood out as a really good interviewer for you?
A good interviewer?
Yes, a good interviewer. And where did they take you, I suppose?
Well, I mean, I think you've already taken my best answer, really, which is Cara Scott. But I mean, even when she was doing the little kind of post, coming out of the game, being, your thing where you've been knocked out, she managed to. I think you got the impression she cared, and that helped, and that she was genuinely interested in the game and stuff like that as well. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I've been interviewed that often, apart from by you guys.
Which clearly is a cynical attempt by us to give me a week's holiday in August. So that's not even, don't even feel that nice thing that Cara brought.
I mean, certainly, if you're counting repeat business, then it's you guys, obviously. You're like stalkers now. I know what's going on. But I don't know. I think that it's kind of like, you know, there's always a way to turn a question around to make it interesting. If you know, I mean, I think people often have a job to do where they've been told they have to ask certain things, and I say, Auntie Chardonnay. She was quite good at getting
Sarah Herring.
So yeah, getting some little extra little thing out of you. But you know, in the end, you know, often, you know, if it's a format where you've been knocked out of something, you know, that's usually most interviews I've done have been when I've just been knocked out of something. You know, and they've got certain things they have to ask, and certainly, you know, not very long, and you know, it's up to you.
Not in Sheffield in 2012, Barney. That was a winner's interview that day.
Man, you've got to get over it. I had 17 outs.
I'm intrigued by this result now. I'm going to see who else was on that final table.
I don't remember that one.
Well, finally, Barney, I wanted to dig deep into your phenomenal Twitter game, because you're probably my favorite follow on Twitter, I got to say. And I voted for you. I got a vote last year, or maybe 2 years ago, and I didn't vote for my good friend Jamie Kerstetter. I knew she'd get too many votes anyway. I voted for you to win that Twitter game Person of the Year. So what I've done is, in this little last segment that we're going to do, is I found my 4 favorite tweets of yours from the last 4 or 5 months. They're basically all 2021 tweets. So right. A couple of months ago, you said, "Oh yeah, online poker is way more skilled than live. Just like cooking is harder when you have recipe books and scales and all the cookers and all the ingredients and all that." Joking aside, do you think live and online poker are vastly different creatures these days thanks to all these tools?
I mean, yes, I think they're different to each other, you mean?
Yes, yeah. Different from one another.
Absolutely. And I think that's, you know, obviously, you would hope the lessons you learn from online bleed into your live game to some extent. I'm sure if I played online, they would. but like the stuff from the live game will only ever be stuff from the live game, and it matters as much as it matters. I mean, you know, it depends a lot on your game. I did an interview about Dave Elliott a couple of years ago for a documentary about him, and I was describing his live game and what I learned from it, you know, and how he just kind of used everything, and he was switched on all the time, and he had great peripheral vision and was noticing all the little things that were going on, and not only that, but spotting moments where he could use that in some way to put an idea into someone's head or stop them doing something he didn't want them to do, to get a check when he wanted a check. You know, a lot. It's stuff that you know, Elon Musk's new robot notwithstanding, it's not something you can really program in. And you know, like I say, if no one's doing it, it doesn't matter at all. But if, you know, but the fact of the matter is, when I go to Vegas, when I sit and play in 1Ks and 2-5 cash games and 5-10 cash games or whatever, there's an enormous amount of stuff going on that's to do with live experience, and it, you know, it's not harder or easy, but you know, less or more important. It's just different, and it doesn't get taught as much. And I think that's one of the big differences. I mean, like if it's a bit like me. It's a bit like with computer. When I got into computing, I was a computer programmer for a while. I got in at a time when there was no career path, there was no degrees, there was no, you know, it was kind of playing games and solving puzzles. And I never would have got into it if it was like it is now. And that's the same with poker. I don't think, you know, I would be a poker player now if I couldn't have got in, you know, making shit up as I went along. And you know, it wouldn't have been the game for me. So for me, it's very important and very different. And you know, but when I wrote that tweet, you know, I'm doing my grumpy old man shtick. You know, I'm you know, having to go at the kids, but you know, I love them really. I want to be one of them really, you know. But I like to kind of, you know, wave my walking stick at them and say, "Sonny, the stuff you don't know."
Well, tweet number 2, great answer by the way. Tweet number 2. There's 4 of these. You said this is a serious one. Actually, it's going to be hard to segue into humor on this one. 10 years ago, I had a great poker deal and thought I'd be free rolling the rest of my life. Yesterday, I had a blowout in the fast lane and spanned the car, but I managed to drive to the hard shoulder, and now I know I'll be free rolling the rest of my life. And then there was a little you did add a little funny thing. Then you said, to be honest, I'm just happy to have had a story that doesn't involve Netflix or banana bread.
There you go. What's your question?
So that sounds fucking awful, frankly. And I saw the photo of the flat tire. Actually, I think you tweeted that as well. How close to a bad accident was that, and how much of a fright did it give you?
I mean, I guess it was pretty close to a bad accident because I was overtaking the lorry when it happened. And you know, it's a weird thing. I sometimes have these dreams where I'm doing, well, something happens like, do you have these? I'm driving a car and all of a sudden it starts to spin or whatever. I'm on a sharp corner and I lose control, and then I'm going over the side of a hill and I'm flying, and now I'm looking down and it's miles down to the ground, and I'm sitting in the car thinking, oh, you know, what's going to happen there? And it's kind of, in the dream, it's kind of serene, you know. Sometimes I think you even, you know, it becomes a lucid dream at that moment. I don't know, but like, it was a bit like that. The car was spinning. I mean, I don't know, did it turn once? What I don't know, it was, you know, I say spinning, it was turning. So at one point I was definitely facing completely the other way. And I remember thinking, this is like one of those dreams. I actually thought I had time to think that. And then I was like, Christ, I've got to get to the hard shoulder. You know, and I managed to steer it and it kind of wobbled a bit, and I got it up there. And actually these 2 guys pulled up in a van and came running towards me because they'd seen it happen and they didn't know. And so I realized that they were worried about me. So the next thing I did was kind of got out of the car and gave them the thumbs up, so they knew I was all right. And it was only after all that I kind of looked at the wheel and thought about what had just happened and thought, oh, you know, that could have ended very differently.
Yeah. It is funny how where your brain can go. I was in it ended up not being a terrible accident, but it could have been a fatal one. I think it was about 8 or 9 years ago. My dad was driving and we spun out on a very narrow country road, and the car did a 270 and the back of the car hit the wall on the other side of the road. So if any traffic had been coming and there were cars on the road, there just wasn't in that moment. We were all goosed. But I remember in those few seconds, like that spinning out of control, oh, holy shit kind of few seconds moment, thinking to myself, just pay attention. You never know, like you don't know what you might be able to do, and you know, in a reaction to fucking, like, whether it's throw the door open or whatever. So I just became really spider sensed, and then I felt like there was a drain of adrenaline from having done that, and almost the minute we kind of didn't even hit the wall that hard in the end with the back of the car, I immediately just went wobbly. Like it was like all of my limbs were kind of went weak, and you just kind of took in what had just happened. And I remember thinking, geez, that's like, it's strange where your brains go. And I remember, Dara, you saying to me you were in you thought was going to be a plane crash once, and just went into a very maybe serene place like Barney described.
Yeah, but like people often talk about the fight or flight response, but I actually think there's a third F as well, which is the focus response, where you just get really hyper focused and concentrate. And I suspect most poker players are like that, because, you know, that's kind of what we do as tension ratchets up in a big live tournament. We have to actually get more and more focused. So I think that's I was also chuckling to myself about Barney's recurring dreams, because my most frequent recurring dream of my life, which I actually started getting as a fairly small child, was I'm being driven in a car somewhere by a woman, presumably my wife, who I don't see, so I, you know, but I have the sense that it is my wife, and it's somewhere rural in Ireland, probably in the West, and then we're in a car accident, and that's how my life ends. So every time I'm in a car now being driven by my wife somewhere outside of Dublin, this literally comes straight back into my mind. And my wife is a wonderful woman who's made my life wonderful, you know, live every moment as if it could be her last, but her driving is very much like that as well. So, but it is interesting where your mind goes, where you feel that this might actually be the end.
Yeah, and I think maybe as well a key difference is if you're sitting in an airplane just in a seat with your belt on, you can do nothing. You're completely you may as well be falling off a cliff for what you could do. Whereas I think if you're in the car and you're driving the car, you are thinking, oh, maybe there's just like a split second reaction I could do to help this. So I think, yes, but they are different sort of scenarios. Anyway, we'll move on from that tweet. Third tweet now, much lighter. We're going to keep it light here. Entertaining show after all. Back in February, Barney, you said, "Dear poker stars, I know you care about responsible gaming. It says so all over your site. So maybe don't keep waving casino bonuses in my face like some sleazy pusher at the school gates. What should sites do to actually push that gamble responsibly message?"
To push the gamble responsibly message. Well, can they really seriously? I don't know. I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I think that I guess there needs to be some kind of regulation and control over what goes on with every industry, and with drinking, with whatever. I haven't really given a lot of thought to what that might be. I mean, actually, funnily enough, I was thinking about when you said about how your politics influences your view of poker. I remember Vicky Corrin, taking that stand and saying that she didn't want to be a sponsored pro anymore if it meant she had to promote online gaming, and I thought that was incredibly admirable, and wondered whether I would do the same thing in her shoes. Hoped that I would, kind of doubted it in a way, depending on. But I think that there is a clear distinction in my mind, between this game of skill, which you can get better at, which you can enjoy, which is worth spending time on and thinking about, and roulette and stuff like that. And they are very good at pushing your buttons, and there's something not very nice about it, I kind of I've been playing online a bit because I'm in the UK at the moment, because of family stuff, and so I can play online, which I don't do when I'm in Spain, and sometimes you just don't feel like doing anything except having a little gamble, and then some, and it's very easily available, and maybe you do a bit too much, and obviously there's some algorithm that notices that you've been doing it and you stopped, and it comes and waves a £5 or a 10, but whatever it is, in front of your face to try and get you in there. And you know exactly why they're doing it. And I guess it's business, but it's not that. Yeah, I mean, I think I was genuinely kind of having a little dig at them. I was making a joke, but at the same time, it's like, come on, leave me alone. I took it very personally.
Yeah. All the good jokes have a little bit of edge to them, I suppose.
Yeah,
yeah. It is one of those things which definitely seems to be getting worse over the time. The sites are making more and more efforts to get us out of poker into other forms of gambling, and it's not just giving us bonuses, and it's actually pretty. I feel it's getting easier and easier to misclick into something now as well, because I'm often playing on lots of different sites, and I'll click a button which is not the button I wanted to click, and some casino game will pop up.
Yeah.
And one of the problems I have is that, like, a lot of the sites now, even their rewards schemes, they essentially use the same type of, you have to spin a wheel or something or open a chest. So it can look like one of those things. So I really wonder what would happen if I accidentally clicked, roulette and put $1,000 on roulette. I think I'd be pretty pissed off, and I would certainly try and do something about it. But I guess I don't have a legal foot to stand on there. But
switch it off. Can you?
I don't think so. I believe you can opt out of casino completely, which I guess would stop you from, at least if it comes up, you couldn't actually gamble on it.
Yeah. Right.
which I guess is the thing to do. But again, you know, I'm a lazy poker player, so I'm not actually going to do that. So I'm just going to come on here and bitch about the fact that I could miss licking into roulette.
I mean, my own problem is that, you know, if I opted out, sooner or later I would opt in again. That's just, I mean, I don't do it that often, but every now and again, you know, it is just something you just feel like doing, you know, and it's I'm not proud of it.
I think that's the bigger concern. Yeah, they might catch you on a bad night where you're just like, fuck it, I'm gonna. And I do have some friends who, unfortunately, left poker not because of they turned into losing players, but when they had like a downswing or a particularly bad day, they would try and get it back on the wheel.
I mean, you know, that's kind of why casinos started spreading live cash games, isn't it? You know, they could see that there were, you know, that's how they were going to get us, and they, I mean, they don't get me that much and that often, but you know, they by God, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I feel bad now because my fourth tweet also names poker stars, but we're not getting on new poker stars. We know this is more of a general issue. You said, whatever classless twat, this was back in January, whatever classless twat thought it was a good idea to let players on poker stars chuck animated cacky bog roll at each other needs to grow the fuck up. Now, other sites have followed suit. They're not the only guilty party on this one. And I've actually heard that Unibet are also going in this direction with emotes and little animated things. So I have to say, I'm not a huge fan of it personally. And I know you're not a huge fan of it either, Dara. However, you have a more nuanced, balanced opinion on this stuff. So I thought maybe I should give you a chance.
Yeah, I mean, this has been around for years. I think 888 were the first, or at least the first that I was aware of, and they've been doing it for years. I do remember a Sam Grafton tweet a few years ago saying that, you know, when I never dreamed in college that one day it would come down to me throwing tomatoes at some other player who was on his table. But I mean, it adds interaction. The recreations like it. It's also kind of a halfway house between chat, which, you know, everybody thought was a great idea at the start. Oh yeah, we'll have online chat, and then very quickly it becomes toxic and racist and every other badism that you can think got thrown into chat. So sites started turning off chat completely. So this is a kind of I don't know, formalized or stylized chat where people can just throw stupid emotes at each other or pull funny faces. So, you know, yeah, it's one of those things. People do sometimes try to wind you up at the table as well using them, which just seems insane that anybody would actually be annoyed because somebody threw a virtual bog roll at them or whatever. But
Barney took to Twitter over it. Maybe it got him on tilt. I don't know.
It's not a hill I want to die on, you know. But like, you know, in that moment, I don't think I'd seen it before, and I just thought, what, is that actual brown stuff on top? What is it? Come on, please.
You were wiping your face.
I mean, it was literally that it was just so childish. You know, that I just thought, surely they could, you know, I don't know, it'd be better if you had a bow and arrow or something or anything. You know, I don't know. But it was, I could see the funny side as well. But I could see there was a tweet there, and I hadn't done an angry tweet for a few days. So,
well, we like to end every show on a high note, on a highbrow note. So at this point, I'm going to turn us over. The interview portion is over, but of course, we always get Dara for his strategy nugget. Dara, what have you got for us this week?
Yeah, I put a huge amount of work into this. I've been working on this for months, actually, which is why this show got delayed. It has nothing to do with us wanting to take a break or any of that stuff. It was purely that this incredibly earth-shattering tip, hot from the solvers, is going to change the poker world. But the point I want to make is when you have different stack sizes, different stack depths, your 3-bet bluffs should be different types of hands. When you have 50 big blinds or less, when you're 3-bet bluffing, typically you want the bluff to get through. That's kind of the main objective of the bluff. So you usually use blocker type hands, you know, ace-x, bad ace-x that isn't good enough to call. So you figure out what are the really strong ace-x that I want to bet, what are the ace-x just below that are happy enough to call, and then just below that we'll use those as the 3-bet bluffs. When you have 100 big blinds deep, it's slightly different. Like, okay, picking up the blinds or the money that's out there is kind of nice, but that's not really the main purpose when you have 200 big blinds. You are sort of more incentivized to try and win a really big pot now and then. So now you bluffs, and the solvers bear this out. It will choose hands more like Jack 9 suited, Queen 9 suited, which, you know, if the guy calls, which is going to happen more often at this stack depth, can actually flop a really big hand, but isn't really like strong enough to just call. So now it becomes a case of like your really strong suited connectors want to just call, and then the ones that are just below that, which are not quite good enough to call, they become our bluffs.
Excellent stuff. I like it. Short and sweet as well. Barney, you do that already, don't you? You just everything that Dara said, that's already in your arsenal.
What, bluffing? No, that's very sort of 2012. That is bluffing. I
was just actually.
I recognise, you know, that what you just said makes complete sense to me, and I'll have to start doing something else now.
Well, I was actually thinking when we were talking about full tilt earlier, and Barney was saying like maybe don't put poker players in charge of a really big business. In many ways, the full tilt story is sort of like a semi bluff that just didn't come in. They got called, they didn't get there, and we all lost our money as a result.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. There's a great summary. Well, look, from full tilt to communism to stock tips to near-death experiences to cacky bog roll. That has been another episode of The Lock-In. Dara, thank you so much as usual. And Barney, thank you.
Cacky Bob Roll, I've got all their records.
Thank you. And I'm conscious of the fact that this is three old guys, three grumpy old men on a podcast, which isn't going to come out for a while, allegedly. So please, none of us die in the next month or two, and make it perfectly obvious that this wasn't recorded at the time.
Quite a
You're going in for minor stomach stapling surgery next week, David, I know.
It's not stomach stapling surgery, O'Cardy. It's a small hiatal hernia. Don't say it's stomach stapling surgery.
Anyway, it's been a pleasure, guys. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Barney.
Thanks, Barney.